أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرفهم أجمعين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: إن لقتل الحسين حرارة في قلوب المؤمنين لن تبرد أبدا. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعد. Dear Mu'mineen wa Mu'minat, brothers and sisters, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. As our young brother just reminded us a few minutes ago, this night of grieving and mourning, this night of commemoration and instruction, this night of the flowering of the intellect and of emotion, this night of mourning has coincided with Laylatul Jumu'ah, with Thursday night. And it is appropriate that on a night such as this, we remember those who have played an important role in ensuring that you and I are here today. This institution of Aza, this institution of mourning, it hasn't reached us easily. A lot of effort has gone into this. Not only has a lot of sweat been shed, but a lot of blood has been shed for this as well, to keep this going. A lot of people have made many efforts. We remember them by name: Maulana Mazahir, Marhum, Maulana Pasha, and of course many who we do not remember by name. Our mothers, who despite being very tired, held us in, when we were little, held us in their arms and brought us here. And though we would make so much trouble for them, they sat down patiently because they wanted their children to grow up in a Husseini environment. Our fathers, who took time out from their busy schedules, from the hard work that they were doing, and who made sure that the zikr of Hussein and of Karbala was kept alive in their households. A lot of effort has gone into this, many sacrifices. And therefore it is good that we remember them tonight.
By this night, send sadaqah, send dua in whatever form. One possibility, of course, is the donation drive that is going on. But of course, we can do much more than even just that. Please recite a salawat by Muhammad wa Ali. Over the preceding nights, we've been trying to acquire a better appreciation of the fact that Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Karbala, they elevate us from the mundane, everyday level of existence that most of humanity unfortunately finds itself trapped in. and allows us to establish a connection with something far greater. It allows us to soar above the daily rigmarole, leaving it behind and connecting to something far richer and far more meaningful.
It is something that we've been trying to appreciate, presenting it in different ways, different aspects of it, and experiencing it ourselves. It's not just about listening, it's also about experiencing it in our own souls as we go over the events of Karbala during this time. But perhaps it would be better to clarify it further and say that when we speak about soaring above the everyday and mundane and leaving it behind, perhaps it would be more accurate to say that we don't really leave the mundane behind. And this is the speciality of Karbala and of Islam, in fact. And because Islam is able to manifest itself in its most superior form in Karbala, we can see it best in Karbala. We don't really leave it behind. Islam has no concept of, for example, monasticism, rohbaniya, leaving the world behind. I love Allah, I love the holy personalities, and therefore I will now no longer work hard for my livelihood. I will go and live in a cave. I expect other people to take care of me. No, we don't have any of this in Islam. In fact, Islam strongly condemns this. And it is perhaps unique among all the major religions of the world in this regard that it has no tolerance for any of this. No tolerance for any of this at all. So when we speak about Karbala helping us to soar above the mundane, I think it's perhaps more accurate to say that Karbala has a special quality that allows the everyday and mundane to transform itself into something meaningful. When we enter this tent of Hussainism and Karbala, we still continue to get up in the morning, to go to work, to struggle, to earn a livelihood, to provide for our children. There is all the housework, there is the cutting and the cleaning and the cooking and the taking care of the kids. There's all of that. All that continues to happen. The same thing that we were doing before we entered the mission and joined this mission. But it is transformed. The same actions, they now acquire a different meaning because we have connected ourselves to something far greater. We have connected ourselves, for example, to Islahi Ummat. We have connected ourselves to Ihya'ul Amr. We have connected ourselves to this lofty civilizational and human mission called Islam as led by the Markaz of Wilaya. The mundane and the everyday gets transformed. Dear brothers and sisters, Karbala is able to, Hussein is able to take care of all our needs, is able to take care of all our needs. It satisfies us not just on an emotional plane. There is a lot of passion and emotion when it comes to Karbala. And all of us know that very well. But it also satisfies us at an intellectual plane. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam leaves, departs from Medina, rejecting the demand for bay'ah, just as we are emotionally inspired by his bravery, we are also impressed by his clarity of understanding and thought. There is thinking behind this. When he sets off for Kufa, we see the same thing. There is a thought behind it. There is an understanding. Yes, Kufa has the potential and the power to transform the Ummah at that time. When news arrives that Hazrat Muslim has been martyred, they continue to proceed towards Kufa, and we discussed that a few nights back. Everything is both electrifying and inspiring. At the same time, it makes perfect sense. And in this regard, I would like to briefly examine another question tonight. Another question tonight. And this question has to do with a fact, with an important fact. And that is that when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was being forced to pledge allegiance to Yazid, bay'ah, in Medina, in Makkah, when he was stopped by Hur, when he was forced to camp in Karbala, in the days leading up from the 2nd of Muharram till the morning of the 10th of Muharram, there was simply one demand being made of Hussein ibn Ali. What was that demand? What was that demand, dear brothers and sisters? It was simply this, that you must declare that you accept Yazid. That's it. That's all that he was being asked to do. And if he did this, he would survive. His family members would survive. His companions would survive. They would be allowed to travel on unmolested wherever they wish to go. Imam Hussein would have been able to continue his mission, teaching students, training his ashab, having people note down his ahadith, and these ahadiths would have been kept safe, and today we would have had thousands of ahadiths perhaps from Imam Hussein instead of the few tens that we have. Establishing schools, helping the poor, charity. He could have done all this for as long as his natural life would have lasted. But he did not choose to do this. And this, dear brothers and sisters, becomes even more interesting. This fact becomes even more interesting, or the question that arises here becomes even more challenging. The question being that why did he not make this choice? He could have stayed alive and done so many good deeds. So many good deeds. This question becomes even more challenging when we take into account the fact that one of the teachings of Islam that the Shia in particular are famous for is a teaching called taqiyya. A teaching called taqiyya. Taqiyya is basically an Islamic teaching which says that if we find ourselves in great difficulty, if we find ourselves facing the threat of death, great physical pain, discomfort, or if we find that we will suffer a very significant financial or economic loss, or a significant societal loss of face on a large scale, at that time, Islam not only allows us to hide our true beliefs and purposes, but in fact, it wants us to hide them. In many cases, and perhaps in most cases, taqiyya would be wajib. If we see that if we find ourselves in a situation where letting people know that we are Muslim would mean death or substantial loss, we are required to hide our Muslim identity. If letting people know our Shia identity will lead to death or substantial loss or damage, we are required to hide our Shia identity. Now Imam Hussein alayhi salam knows very well that the rejection of bay'ah is going to have terrible, bloody consequences. We know that for a fact because at several points in his journey, he has spoken about his martyrdom. So why is it that Imam Hussein chooses to reject this demand of bay'ah? He could, for example, have simply said without meaning it in his heart. He could have said that, yes, I accept Yazid, now please let me go, without really meaning it in his heart. That would be an example of taqiyya. They would have let him go, and he would have carried on his good work, his works of charity and education and what have you. Taqiyya is an important part of Islam's teachings as well, dear brothers and sisters. Sometimes it is erroneously claimed that it is only the Shia who believe in taqiyya. That is not true. Yes, the Shia are open about their belief in taqiyya, but all Muslims believe in taqiyya, and that's because its root lies in the Quran. At the time when Islam was in a weak position, let's go back to about 1450 years ago. Islam was in a weak position. We know that Rasulullah Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He began his prophetic mission, his civilizational mission. He began that in the city of Makkah. And he was in great difficulty at that time. Most of the people rejected his da'wah. Those who accepted his invitation to Iman and faith were usually those who were weak, slaves, the poor, and the rich guys. No way. Very few of them accepted Islam during that stage. A 13-year period of extreme stress and difficulty in Makkah. And during that time, it used to be common. For example, there is this rich merchant. He strongly hates Islam, but for example, his slaves have become Muslim in his own household. Or his young children, because young people are quicker to accept goodness and recognize goodness. His young children, his young weak children have become Muslim, and this would infuriate them. And therefore, we had cases where they would capture and they would abduct Muslims, take them out somewhere near the city, and would torture them extensively so that they would turn back from Islam. In one such incident, we have a family, a mother and father and their young son, a young man. The parents are called Yasir and Sumayya, and they have a son, his name is Ammar. They are captured, they are taken somewhere, they are tortured extensively, and the demand that is being made of them is that you must say some words of abuse when it comes to the Rasulullah, and you must praise our idols. They are being tortured, they refuse, and as a result of this refusal and the torture, the parents, Yasir and Sumayya, they embrace martyrdom. But the son, Ammar goes on to do what is being demanded of him. And he says some unpleasant things about Rasulullah which are being asked of him, and he goes on to praise their idols. They let him go. And he comes running towards Rasulullah with tears streaming down his face and saying, I am finished. I have ruined myself. Rasulullah asks him what has happened, and he says that this has happened. I have done this. Rasulullah embraces him and tells him that the next time you face a similar situation, make sure you do the same thing once again. Make sure you do the same thing once again. This is something accepted by all Muslim sects, and anyone who says that this is something peculiar to the Shia and this is proof about their hypocrisy, they are munafiq, this is not true. And this has been extensively answered by scholars over the centuries. So when taqiyya is a clear teaching of Islam, why is it that Imam Hussain does not act upon taqiyya in the days prior to Karbala and the events leading up to Karbala? Are we to say, for example, that Imam Hussain alayhi salam was so overcome by passion and with emotion that he forgot about this ruling, this teaching of Islam? It's out of the question. He's masoom. And if he, na'uzubillah, is to forget Islam's teachings, he cannot be a role model for us. Are we instead to say that taqiyya is a teaching for all of us, people like us, but for the ma'soom, no. The ma'soom is not allowed to do taqiyya. He has a separate shariat. That's not the case. We have from the other ma'soomin, for example, a hadith which say, At-taqiyatu dini wa dino abai. Taqiyya is part of my faith and the faith of my forefathers. It's part of what they practice. And anyway, if we go down this path of saying that the Ahlul Bayt have a different set of responsibilities, there's a different Sharia for them, we end up in falling in the ditch of not being able to see them as role models for ourselves. So none of these can be explanations for this. We need to seek the explanation somewhere else, and alhamdulillah, like every other aspect of Karbala, just as it speaks to our heart and to our emotions, It provides satisfying answers for our mind and our intellect as well. And here, if we simply consider the fact that this teaching and ruling of taqiyya is there for a purpose, we will find the answer. For example, dear brothers and sisters, why is it that we fast in the month of Ramadan? It has a purpose, and the purpose is to increase our self-control. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Similarly, taqiyya has a purpose. The teaching of taqiyya, the life-giving teaching of taqiyya has a purpose, and the purpose is to safeguard the lives of the believers, the wealth of the believers, the health of the believers, their social status. It exists to safeguard this. But why should the life and the health and the wealth and the social status of believers be safeguarded? Because believers, mu'mineen, Muslimeen, are engaged in a massive civilizational mission. They have lofty goals. If they are not going to stay alive, how are they ever going to perform their duty? If they are going to lose all their wealth, how are they going to be able to perform their duty? So we see that there is something at the level of life and health and wealth of the mu'mineen, and this is in fact a stepping stone for something higher, which is the establishment and spread of Islam and Ihya Amr, the authority of the Ahlul Bayt. So this is safeguarded so that it can help that to be achieved. But when we are faced with a situation, dear brothers and sisters, where safeguarding any of these things will, instead of being a precursor to something higher, will in fact cause damage to Islam, then obviously taqiyya ceases to be something which is permissible. And Imam Hussain understands this. He understands that if he is to choose this Islamic teaching of taqiyya at that time, in that situation, where Yazid, who is such a well-known scoundrel and sinner, is now claiming to be the successor of the Prophet, if he, as the last remaining bastion of hope for the entire Islamic Ummah, is to fall to his knees and accept this simple demand, and even if he is to utter with his tongue but not with his heart that I accept Yazid, it would mean two things. It would mean the continuation of his life and the life of his family and the life of his followers, but it would also mean the death of Islam. And he understands this. And therefore it makes no sense at that point for him to practice taqiyya. And therefore, once again, as I said, dear brothers and sisters, Karbala offers us not just emotional inspiration and satisfaction, but convincing intellectual satisfaction itself, and model and teaching to lead our lives in the way that it ought to be. Please recite a salawat by Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We have been ordered by the Masumeen to enliven, to beautify our gatherings by the zikr of Ali. Zayyinu majalisikum bi dhikri Ali. Beautify your gatherings by the zikr of Ali. And one of the ways of remembering Ali is to remember those who loved and followed Ali. And since we've been talking of taqiyya, let us remember a personality who is associated both with Imam Ali alayhi salam and with this issue of taqiyya. The events of Karbala pertain to Muharram of 61 Hijri. Muharram of 61 Hijri, which is the month that precedes that, Zul Hijj of 60 Hijri. That is the month in which we see the martyrdom of Hazrat Muslim in Kufa. But that was not the only martyrdom. There was another martyrdom that happened in Kufa much closer to Muharram, in the closing days of Zul Hijjah. And that, dear brothers and sisters, was the martyrdom of an extremely Nurani personality called Hazrat Maysam Tammar al-Asadi. Hazrat Maysam was a companion of three Imams. He first became acquainted with Imam Ali alayhi salam during the time of his Khilafah in Kufa, and very soon became a part of his inner circle. He was known as one of the Ashabus Sir, those who were aware of the secrets of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then after Imam Ali's martyrdom, he was with Imam Hassan and with Imam Hussein, but he continued to live in Kufa. He was a seller, a trader of dates, khurma. I believe in Malay as well, it's called khurma, that's what I've been told. So he was a trader in khurma and dates, and because of his association with Imam Ali and because of his love for Imam Ali alayhi salam, he had an extraordinary ability, a set of abilities, one of which is that he was able to see events in the future. Most people are not able to do that. For example, he correctly predicted the death of Muawiyah, Yazid's father, and many other such things. And therefore, obviously, in Kufa, he was a person of some importance, not because of his wealth, but because of his association with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When Hazrat Muslim had been martyred and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad had taken Kufa in his vice-like grip, at that point, he started to trouble everyone who used to live there, imposing unreasonable taxes, making unreasonable demands. At this time, a delegation of traders said, we need to put a stop to this. We need to go and present a petition to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and get this to stop. So they formed a team and they decided that Maysam would be their spokesman. So they went to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. And Hazrat Maysam spoke eloquently, pointing out the injustices of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and his officials, and made very, very serious and clear and logical demands there. At this point, Ubaidullah noticed that this man has something special about him. He speaks eloquently. The others defer to him. He is held in great respect by all the other traders, many of whom are much wealthier than he is. So he asks who he is. He is told his name is Maysam al-Asadi. And he says, what do you do? He says, I sell dates. So he laughs, because obviously that was probably not a very, very profitable business at that time. And then he says, why should I believe you? You could be a liar. And at that point, Hazrat Maysam replies and he says that I cannot lie, because I have a close association with Ali ibn Abi Talib. When he says this, Ubaidullah flies into a rage and he says, is that so? You have a close association with Ali ibn Abi Talib? All right, I'll see what I can do with you. I'll see what you can do with this association. And at that point, he orders him to be arrested. He orders Hazrat Maysam to be arrested. Hazrat Maysam, in front of everybody in that court, says that you are now arresting me. Let me tell you that you will execute me at such and such location, and before I die, you will order for my tongue to be sliced off. He declares this. And because I am associated with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, I do not lie. Ubaidullah says, is that so? Is that so? Just look out. Just watch out for what I am going to do. I will not do this. I will not do this. I will not execute you, or I will not execute you at that particular location, or I will not slice your tongue, so that I can prove that you are a liar just like the person that you were associating yourself with. And then he is imprisoned. And he is imprisoned, but then after that, after a few days of imprisonment, he is causing so much trouble in prison for the authorities by propagating the message of the Ahlul Bayt that they decide to hang him up, but not hang him by his neck, but hang him up by his chest and his body at a prominent location in the city. And this is happening at a time when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is very heavily engaged with the issue of Imam Hussain alayhi salam approaching Kufa, contacting Hor, contacting this, that, sending messages here and there. He is hung there, and while he is there, he continues to narrate stories and events from Imam Ali's life and speak out in favor of Imam Ali, and point out the superiority of Imam Ali alayhi salam over all the other Muslims of the Ummah. And when this causes trouble in Kufa, you must realize Kufa is still on edge. The revolution led by Hazrat Muslim has just been suppressed, but there is news of Hussein coming. The city is on edge. At this point, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad himself forgets what he has said, and he orders for Hazrat Maisam's tongue to be cut off as punishment for what he is saying while he is hanging up there. And this is what leads to his martyrdom. So here we have another case of somebody not acting upon Islam's teaching of taqiyya. These are exceptional cases, dear brothers and sisters. In general, the expectation is for us to act upon taqiyya. That's what most of the situation is like. But we see important instances where Islam provides flexibility and provides a different solution. And this is where these difficult and challenging situations are where knowledge plays an important role. And this is where our leaders, our maraje, our ulama, they are the ones who are able to guide us to be able to select the right decision to take at the right point in time. Dear brothers and sisters, as I mentioned, Karbala provides solutions to all our problems, to all our needs. Be they intellectual or emotional or even material, Hussein and Karbala, they are a way to meet many of our material needs as well, especially when we attach ourselves to this caravan of Hussein and work towards the purposes and mission that he was working towards, dear brothers and sisters. One of the biggest problems and challenges that we face in our lives, dear brothers and sisters, and perhaps, possibly, it may in fact be the central and most important question and challenge that we face in our lives, dear Mu'mineen wa Mu'minat, is the question of how do we establish a connection with our Imam? We are Shia. If we are Shia, we have an Imam, a living Imam. If we are Shia, we are required to have a connection with him. If we are Shia, we are required to obey him and play a role in his mission. This is one of the biggest questions that we face. And this question is made all the more difficult and challenging by the fact that our Imam is in occultation, is in ghaiba. We cannot send a letter to him. We cannot go and see him. We cannot ask him face to face what he wants from us. This makes it very challenging. And this central challenge and problem in the life of a Shia, in comparison to which all our other questions and our other problems fade into insignificance, this too can be answered with the help of Karbala, in which is why there is this close connection that exists between Karbala and between serving our Imam in our age as well. All these gatherings, dear brothers and sisters, this narration of Karbala, why are we going over this? It has to have a purpose. And its ultimate purpose can be found in serving the Imam of our own age and time. But how? How should we do this? He's not here among us at least not visible to us, not easily accessible. How do we do it? Dear brothers and sisters, this can be answered in many ways. There are many aspects to this. Several aspects to it. I will simply, in a couple of minutes, just hint at one direction in this. Dear brothers and sisters, Karbala, if we immerse ourselves in Karbala, in the events of Karbala, in the life of Hussein and his followers and companions, we see a model beginning to emerge from it. A model which we can replicate, emulate, and therefore serve our Imam. What do we see in Karbala? What do we see in Karbala? We see a central personality, Hussein ibn Ali, the markaz of wilayah, the markaz of God's authority on this earth. And this central personality has a mission. His mission at that time is to reject this demand for bay'ah and to spread word in the Muslim ummah that I have rejected, I have taken a stand, and thus inspire the ummah and safeguard Islam forever. By the way, this thing which is said that Hussein with his sacrifice saved Islam, sometimes it is said this is hyperbole, this is an exaggeration, the Shia get carried away. But I'm sure that after all these years of attending majlis and thinking over the various aspects of Karbala, we understand that this is no exaggeration. This is simply a simple statement of fact. Hussein with his sacrifice truly saved Islam. So there is a central figure. He has a mission. He has followers. The followers know what his mission is, dear brothers and sisters. This is very important. They know and they understand what his mission is. We have no record of his followers saying that, why are you doing this? Let's just stay in Karbala. Why don't you take the path of taqiyya? Your forefathers have taken the path of taqiyya. Your forefathers have come to some kind of adjustment and agreement. Didn't, for example, your father, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Please come forward, please come forward. Please come ahead. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Especially those brothers at the back near the yellow barrier, if you can please move in front, please. Thank you, to make more space for the Muslimat. Thank you. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad sallallahu
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Jal farajah Muhammad salli ala Muhammad. Your father, Imam Ali, are you more brave than he was? Didn't he come to an adjustment and a kind of acceptance regarding those who had acquired authority and rule within the Muslim Ummah? Your brother, whom you claim to follow, O Hussein, did he not sign an agreement with Yazid's father and in that agreement hand over rule to Yazid's father? We don't have any record of any such conversation or question on the part of the followers. They understand what his mission is. They understand what he was after. And once they understood what he was after, we see his followers giving everything that they have, including their most precious possession, which is perhaps their children, giving everything that they have to achieve the mission of that central personality. Dear brothers and sisters, this offers us a line of thought. This offers us a way of approaching this question. How should I serve my Imam? It begins with trying to understand what it is that our Imam is after. If we can improve our understanding of what he is trying to do, and let me make it very clear, our Imam is working very hard even during this period of ghaiba. If anyone has any misconception that he is simply waiting and waiting in the sense that he is just sitting on some chair, for example, looking at the clock, counting the days, ticking of days on the calendar, waiting for his reappearance, this is absolutely not the case. He is working, but he is working in ways that we cannot see. So if we can understand what it is that he is working for, then we can think about ways in which we can play a role in that. And we can get a sense of what he's working for by simply looking at the mass of narrations and the heritage of Islamic teachings that have reached us. For example, it is narrated about him from the Masumeen that his central mission can perhaps be described in these words that have come in the ahadith. Yamla'ul arza qistan wa adla. Our Imam will fill this earth with justice. Kama muli'at dhulman wa jawra. Just as it was full of injustice prior to his reappearance. This is what he's setting out to do. And therefore, in these years, in these centuries and generations leading up to his reappearance, he is fundamentally trying to prepare the world to be able to carry out this mission when he reappears, and in which preparing people such as those who are gathered in this hall today plays a very important role. Preparing a special community within humanity, which is able to play a disproportionate role in establishing justice and fighting injustice on this earth, because of their greater commitment and iman, because of their greater understanding and knowledge, because of their greater organizational abilities, because of the greater love and commitment that they have among themselves, because of their greater wealth, because of their greater power. All these things and many more can all play a role in countering injustice and establishing justice. If we get a sense of this, and this we can get from Karbala, we can try to answer this question. The question of how should I serve my Imam? The question in front of which all other questions, if we reflect upon it properly, all other questions will pale into insignificance. We can start to look for the answer to this. And as I said, there is an important connection between Karbala and our Imam. Let me just close this by narrating something which has come in our narrations. It is said that when our Imam Hazrat Hujjat ibn al-Hasan alayhi salatu wassalam will reappear, he will reappear in Makkah. And it is said that he will reappear and will be seen leaning with his shoulder on the wall of the Kaaba. Inshallah, may all of us get to see this in our lifetimes. And if this happens after our lifetimes, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us back to life so that we can see this. And it is said that when he reappears, one of the first things that he will say will be this: Ya Ahlal Alam, O people of the world. Imagine the scene, the 12th Imam reappearing. Ya Ahlal Alam, O people of the world, Inna Jaddi al-Hussein qataluhu atshana. My forefather Hussein, they massacred him while he was still thirsty. It's one of the first statements that he will make to the world. To the world. The scholars say that this may have an important message for us. Remember that when somebody appears for the first time, say somebody walks into your house or into a gathering, the first thing that he does is that he introduces himself. And one of the common ways of introducing yourself is to speak about your connection to somebody that the others already recognize. When I come to your house and you don't know me, I will frequently say that I am so and so. I am the friend of so and so, somebody who is your friend. I am the son of so and so, my father, you know him already. I belong to such and such country, a country which is known to you. So when our Imam addresses the world and begins his mission with this declaration, Inna Jaddi al-Hussein qataluhu atshan. Scholars have said this may point to a reality, which is that it is a world which already recognizes Hussein. It is a world that already recognizes Hussein, and therefore he is able to use this widespread recognition of Hussein ibn Ali to introduce himself to the world and begin his worldly mission of establishing justice and countering injustice. And this picture, this idea, this question of finding how do we find a way to serve our Imam, perhaps one of the answers lies in this, in making the awareness and knowledge of Karbala and Hussein far more common than it is at this point in time. Far more common. The grounds are ready, dear brothers and sisters. Nobody has a problem with hearing about Hussein. Hussein speaks to people's human nature. People respond very well to Karbala. In many cases, they respond better to the message of Karbala than they respond to the message of Rasulullah himself, in many cases at the initial stage. There is no barrier. The barrier mostly lies in our own motivation and our own ingenuity in this regard. And it is hoped that inshallah, young people in particular will be inspired to serve their Imam, particularly when it comes to spreading the message of Hussein. And when we are speaking of young people, let's remember one of the young personalities of Karbala who we commemorate especially tonight, dear brothers and sisters, when it was time for the morning prayer on the day of Ashura. At that point, it is narrated that Imam Hussein asked his son Ali Akbar to recite the azan. Why Ali Akbar? There were so many others. Perhaps it is because Imam Hussein himself describes Hazrat Ali Akbar as Ashbahun Nas Khalqan wa Qulqan bin Nabi. The one individual who most resembled Rasulullah, both in appearance and in his akhlaq and manner. It seems that even on the morning of Ashura, Imam Hussein wants to guide the enemy. He wants to save them from eternal hell and damnation. He wants to tell them that, look, if you are still confused about who I am and what I stand for, have a look at this young man. It is as if Rasulullah himself is standing before you and reciting the azan. If you haven't yet come to your senses, come to your senses now. The azan is recited, the salat is performed, the day begins, and as the sun rises up higher and higher into the skies, the number of martyrs and their bodies being laid out next to the tents keeps rising, keeps rising, keeps rising. Till we reach a point after Zohr, where now all the companions have sacrificed themselves. And now it is the turn of Banil Hashim. The first person, according to narrations, who goes out from the Banil Hashim to fight the enemy and to be martyred for the cause of his Imam is Hazrat Ali Akbar. He first approaches his father seeking permission for battle. And his father, Imam Hussein, immediately and effortlessly grants him permission. It's very different from what we see with some of the other members of this household, where, for example, we've seen what difficulty Hazrat Qasim had to face. But this is his own son, his precious, eldest son. Allahu Akbar. Look at this jihad. Effortlessly gives him permission. And then he tells him, oh my son Ali, go and take permission. Go and take permission from the ladies as well. And so Hazrat Ali Akbar goes inside the tents. He goes inside the tents and he first goes to his mother, Hazrat Layla. And he seeks permission from her. She too effortlessly permits him, allows him. Some scholars have said that perhaps one reason for her, despite being a mother, her effortless giving of permission, apart from her iman, apart from her faith, apart from her following Imam Hussein, may have to do with the fact that Hazrat Layla was related distantly by blood to Yazid. And there is nothing shocking about this. There's nothing shocking about this. And this is no defect for Hazrat Layla as well. Hazrat Layla may be distantly related by blood to Yazid, but her entire existence was Husseini. And it is one of the things that we as Muslims can be proud of, that we see several personalities in Karbala for whom blood relations matter nothing. It is Iman and it is faith that determines who they are. It is Iman and faith. And so she gives him permission. Then, now it is the turn of Sayyida Zainab. Ali Akbar goes to his aunt Sayyida Zainab. They share such a close bond that it is said that in Medina, many people used to think Ali Akbar is Zainab's son. They share such a close bond. Zainab has played an enormous role in Ali Akbar's upbringing. He sits down next to her, embraces her, places his head on her lap perhaps. She asks him, what is the matter? At this time, you are embracing me like this. What is it? Do you want to say something? Hazrat Ali Akbar asks her a question. He says, oh my dear aunt, please tell me, who has higher station? You or your mother Fatima? Who has a higher position? Hazrat Zainab smiles and replies without any hesitation, what sort of a question is this? Everybody knows that my mother has a far greater position than I do. She is Sayyidatun Nisa'il Alameen. And at that point, Akbar senses this opportunity. He says that if that is the case, then please sacrifice your son on Fatima's son. Sayyida Zainab catches the drift, understands what he's saying, embraces him, and with tears streaming down her cheeks, permits him to go and fight. Out there on the battlefield, the enemy is waiting. The enemy is waiting. One of the enemy soldiers narrates that we had seen this pattern for some time, that if anyone from Hussein's army, some of his companions, those who had family members present there, a few of the companions also had their family members present there, when they would come out to battle, they would seek permission from their family as well and say goodbye to their family members. And so we were used to this pattern that somebody would go inside the tent, raise the curtain, go inside, after a few moments, raise the curtain again and come out and come to battle. When it was the turn of the Bani Hashim, we saw the first young man from Bani Hashim do the same thing. And we knew what the pattern is. He goes inside by raising the curtain, comes outside, raises the curtain, comes to battle. And so, when after Ali Akbar had gone inside, after a few moments, when we saw the curtain of the tent being raised, we were getting ready for battle because he's coming out. But then something strange happened. The curtain dropped again. A few moments later, the curtain was raised again and then it fell again. And this happened a few times. And we couldn't figure out what was going on, or what we will say is, oh, you who have been condemned to hellfire, you have no idea what is happening inside the tent. Ali Akbar wants to go to battle, but when he tries to leave from the tent, a sister holds his hand and pulls him back inside. He tries to go out again. His mother embraces him and pulls him back. His aunt is holding him back. Sometimes the little children in the tent, they are pulling at his robes and holding him back. It isn't easy for Ali Akbar, who resembles Rasulullah more than anyone else, to leave the ladies. And then eventually he comes out. It is said he then goes back to Rasulullah. He goes back to Rasulullah. And he says his final goodbye. Rasulullah prepares him for battle, dresses him in his armor, puts him on his horse, and then tells him, oh my dear son, as you're going away, mahlan mahlan ya bunayya. Don't go in haste. Go slowly. And if possible, as you're heading towards the battlefield, keep looking back towards me. This is an obedient son. He starts heading out to battle. And he turns around to look at his father. And what does he see? He sees his old father holding his back and walking, following him with small steps. He steps down from the horse. Oh, my father, what are you doing? I will never be able to go to battle like this. Why are you doing this? Imam Hussain alayhi salam looks at him with a meaningful glance and says, Oh Ali Akbar, if you had a young son and you were sending him to die, you would not ask me why I am doing this. Hazrat Ali Akbar engages in battle. He engages in battle, sends so many of these soldiers to hell. But eventually, dear brothers and sisters, there comes a point when there is this one hard-hearted, cruel man. He is greedy and eager for the reward that awaits him. He doesn't have the courage to come and fight him face to face. He is standing at a distance, taking aim with his spear, and then finally, he lets go of his spear, which then strikes our young Ali Akbar in his heart. And as he is falling down from the horse, he calls out, Ya Abata, oh my father, please accept my Akhiri salam, my final salam. I can see my grandfather, I can see Rasulullah waiting to receive me, holding a cup of clear, pure water in his hands. Hussain rushes to the battlefield, reaches by the side of Ali Akbar, sees that Ali Akbar is breathing his last on the sands of Karbala, holds him in his hands, and with tears streaming down his face, says, Oh, may Allah destroy those who have killed you. The world has no worth after your death. Oh, Ali Akbar. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala